Hey everybody, Red Mage here. Welcome back to this series where I go through different RPG products that I have and give them a quick flip through and review. In this one I'm going to be going through 3 setting books for different OSR games. Well, actually 2 of them are for Shadowdark, but one of them is for Kel Arath, which is that sword and sorcery gritty setting, or I should say RPG that was released this past year. I think it was this past year. It was really cool. I kickstarted it and there are some expansions that came out for it very recently, and this is well, the one that I'm going to be going through in a minute here is a third-party book for it. But the first and the third are by Lauren David Wegan, and they're expansions to the Soulblight set. So I'm going to be going through The Dying Vale, that's the first one. The second one I'm going to be going through is Al-Rathak, which is that sort of third-party solo adventure setting, basically. It's solo, but you can also play it with the regular rules for the RPG, which you can play in multiplayer, for Kel Arath. And then I'm also going to be going through the Adamant Crown, which is another expansion for the world of Soulblight, which is, again, that Shadowdark world that I've covered in a video that I did on this channel a while back. So let's go through each of them. I'm going through them in order of how long they are. This one is 82 pages, Soulblight, The Dying Vale. What I like about all 3 of them is how great the world building is, the lore. It's really flavorful and it draws you right in. Soulblight is a really well-developed setting. And so the expansions really kind of, well, they expand different aspects of it, different sections of it, but it's all built into the same world. And the lore seems like it goes pretty deep. So whether you use this as written and you play in the Soulblight setting, or you take for your own game, this is a really, really good product. All 3 of these are, but I would say especially these 2 Soulblight expansions, I'm really a fan of them. What I also really like about them, as you'll see as we go forward here, let's start going through it. You have to turn your head a little bit for a few of these pages, as they're off on the side, obviously, is the way that they're laid out. They're designed, the hex crawl element of them is designed to mimic and to be in the same style, maybe is a better way of putting it, as the Cursed Scroll zines and the settings that are in those books. And even the maps that are drawn for them are very, very close to those maps in terms of the style. So it fits into that overall look. I really like that. So The Dying Vale of Rulacon. Now this is a really interesting game. Here's the map, because you guys can see. Like I said, it looks a lot like those Cursed Scroll zines, the maps from those Cursed Scroll zines. So this is a really interesting setting because, well, the idea here is that the valley that you're living in is doomed. There is this cataclysm that is happening, and you have to get out, and you have a certain amount of time before everything is just over. And so there's this timer in the background of this adventure, which is going to put pressure on you. So you're going to make a normal character, or kind of like a peasant or a commoner. I mean, they're an adventurer, but they're an adventurer by necessity, not some great hero from the past who's rising up. Those people all failed to stop the big catastrophe from happening. And so now you're just a normal dude who's trying to get out, you and the people around you. It's a really cool idea, and it's built into the whole game. There are some additional ancestries and backgrounds and things like that, and the ancestries are cool. I like them. They seem really strong, the new ones. For example, the Dragon Curse, that Draconic Strength ability seems really, really good. It means you can get an extra modifier to your stats. You basically get a +2, except this can go up to +5. So you modify the modifier, not the number. So if you had an 18, it's not that you have a 20, it's that you have instead of a +4, you get a +5. That's really strong. That +5%, it might not seem like a lot, but when you stack it on top, it could be very, very strong. And you get to choose Strength, Dex, or Con. So the Dragon Curse is a very, very strong ancestry. Cannot be of lawful alignment. Fair enough. The other ancestries don't seem as strong to me. For the Earth Gnomes, which were added in, the Vitala. The Vitala are also really interesting too. A really cool, I think that's how you say it. I'm going to be doing my best to guess at the pronunciations here, but I think it's Vitala. But the idea is that they're sort of these death creatures, spirits who have passed and have come back to life. But they have a really interesting ability. Their mere touch deals a d6 damage to living creatures and causes plant matter to rot. How exactly do you do that in game? Is it a touch attack? Is it required? Would you make a dex check? Is it a strength check? How exactly would you talk about that in terms of damage? Is it in addition to a punch or to a stab? It seems like it has to be the physical touch. So, yeah. Anyway, that's a question. One thing to note throughout this whole book is the art. The Soulblight series all has some really, really cool art. It makes good use of public domain art, and it makes it kind of interesting. It takes sometimes weird takes on it, and it combines it in a very interesting way. It adds a little bit of a punky feel at times because it's not a necessarily coherent style throughout, and that kind of jarring, it can be a bit of a jarring experience. But I think really what you want to try to do as you read through these books is try to take the aesthetic of the page as the page, rather than trying to look at the whole book as one aesthetic whole. Because I think very often, and this is something that I missed in previous sort of analysis of punk books, like that punk zine look, is very often I try to take the whole aesthetic together. And if you do that, I think it ends up being kind of haphazard and a little botched as a full look. That's not the case here, because I don't think there's not a lot of massive editing done to these pieces. They're mostly taken as is, and they're really, really beautiful pieces of art for the most part. But if you take each page with that art as sort of a self-contained unit, and you look at like the design of the page around the piece that's been given, then I think it makes a lot more sense. Now, I'm not sure, I haven't talked to the creator about that, and I haven't done a deep study of sort of the punk zine look or that whole vibe or that movement. And I have to say, even with that, even kind of with that understanding of it, I still prefer kind of a hand-drawn, even if it's simpler art. I still tend to prefer a coherent art aesthetic as you go through a piece. But I think the pieces for this setting and for the Adamant Crown, as we'll see, have been chosen to fit the tone, especially I would say Adamant Crown, have been they fit the tone of that particular setting quite well. Okay, now coming back to this one, there's a lot of really cool extra rules here. You get the Soulblight itself, which can mark you, and then it can mutate you. I think it's like stages of this, and it can either be despair or hatred in this case. You get particular treasures that your characters were going to start with depending on your background. I think that's how that works. But you could also just use them yourself. They have corruptions, curses, and benefits, which is cool. Lots of treasures, as you can see. How to traverse the Vale, rules for that. And I think that's really cool. There's the writing throughout these books. The Soulblight series has good writing, really good writing throughout, and it's very flavorful. It draws you in, and I think you get that here as well. There's not as much fiction in this, like in-world fiction written into this book, as there is to Adamant Crown, which is the last one that we'll cover. But there still is enough to draw you in, and you get a sense of what this particular setting is like here. And it's an interesting one because there's like machines. Everything's getting corrupted basically in this Vale, everything, including the machines. And that's one of the things that this setting had, were a lot of very sophisticated, interesting machines. You get the keys to all the different hexes, and then you get a particular dungeon at the end. And this is a big dungeon. I would say most of this book is one of the big dungeons here. You get the background of the dungeon, so the summary of the upper level. Now, my book has a blank page 28. I'm not sure exactly why. I think maybe if I were to split this out into 2 pages, it would look, maybe it's where the maps are supposed to be, or maybe it was done for spacing purposes. I'm not sure why. Could have been a mistake. It could be my particular PDF. I don't know, but just a blank page. But anyway, you get the level 1 of the dungeon. And then as you move forward, you get a really good layout. The dungeon is 3 levels, pretty much. You have general features of the level, you have the encounters for that level, and then you have the particular room descriptions. And as you can see, they're laid out quite well. Brief paragraph tells you what the room was or is, and then some details about the room that are, if you keep searching, or things that can happen there, or things that are important there. Monsters, treasure, tricks, traps, details, things like that. It's a cool dungeon. I wish there were maps repeated, but it's not a big deal because each level isn't very huge, and so you're not doing a ton of flipping. But you do have to flip or have a separate book open. This one is a 2-page spread. I could have opened this up into a 2-page document. It would make more sense that way. Excuse me. But I think you get a good sense of what it looks like. So you get, again, the Hero's Tomb, the Old Catacombs, and then down below you get the 3rd level, which is Zaharum's Tomb. Now, we're 47 pages in, and we've gotten to the 3rd level of the dungeon. As you can see, this is 45 rooms up to this 3rd level. It's significant. This is a big-ish dungeon, and I like the way it's laid out. You can see it's not, it's got wings essentially, and those wings, it's not a ton of like looping. It's not a dungeon where you're going to be navigating and going from one level to the next with a lot of ups and downs, and it's more of a traditional dungeon, but it's well designed, and the room descriptions that I read through, I didn't read through every room in detail, so I have to say that, but the rooms that I did read through seem pretty cool, and it's part of a really good setting. The tone of that setting is really, really fun. The very back of the book, you get some additional monsters, and once again, this is, in my opinion, one of the stronger parts of both of these books, the Adamant Crown and Dying Vale, is the really cool creatures you get. They're good stat blocks. What you don't see, and I'm happy about this, is you don't see any generic stat blocks, really. There's something interesting about every stat block, even if it is something just like undead, but for the most part, everything is getting something cool. So the Black Willow, for example, a sapling twisted by Shun's power to awaken a wretched slave of the night tree, long, dark branches lashing bitterly. 3 lashes at +6 deals d10 plus lacerate. Each consecutive hit on the same target deals +1 bonus damage. So that could stack up. You get 3 attacks at d10, and each one is getting +2, or it's going to be +1 or +2. That's a lot of extra damage. So the Black Willow, don't sleep on that foe, but it's a cool idea. All the monsters in here are often like that. The misbegotten knight. Snakes twist and writhe in and out of the warrior's flesh. Born of the serpent's death-defying hunger, the vice it had to leave behind to ascend. That's really cool. Bone-bound hound. That's hard to say for me. The bone-bound hound. The skeletal remains of a loyal hunting dog brought back by blood-wrought spell to heed its master's command once more. That's a cool idea. Add those into Dolmenwood. There's a good section on dogs. You could add in the bone-bound hound to the list of dogs that the players can get. There are a lot of monsters in this book. Pages and pages of monsters, really. 2 of the really big ones at the end, powerful ones, level 12 and level 13. You have Ebnir Sa Noroka Nekhizolet. I have no idea if I'm pronouncing that right, but that's the sort of phonetic reading that I get right there. A level 13 monster, very strong. And then Domin the Core Mind, which is, I like this one a lot. Tangles of metal threads, miles long each, like fungal mycelia around a central beating bronze heart. 3 glowing magus cores sit within its frame, the eyes of Rulacon's true sovereign, leaking black soot tears. That's awesome. He is the Deus Est Machina. God is the machine. Domin has absolute control over all blighted Yantra constructs. Yantra constructs are the things that the machines you find throughout the whole setting. When endangered, 1d4 Yantra Sentinels will assemble in near of Domin and defend it. Once per round, a Yantra construct can force an attack targeting Domin to target it instead. It's a Sovereign of Despair. Darkness of Mind. Very powerful creature, very powerful boss. And Ebnir seems very strong as well. A white-haired, black-armored elven woman, her eyes obscured by a mask of black volcanic glass. She's got some hexes that she can use. Very, very cool. At the very end of the book, you just get a few more monsters, and then you get Soulblight with the credits by Lauren David Wegan. Layouts by Taylor Seeley Wright. You can tell it's in that same style there that you see from a lot of the Shadowdark products. Taylor Seeley Wright put out a document that lets people use a certain format, and I think a lot of the Shadowdark books have followed in that line. So Soulblight is a great product, a great setting hex crawl. The individual locations aren't given a ton of detail. They're given just enough to make them kind of interesting. You'd have to do a bit of work to expand them a little, but the dungeon is really cool, and the thing I love about this is the flavor, the tone, the ideas, and the monsters. Really, really cool. So Soulblight is a great one. I should be totally clear, I forgot to say this early on, but all 3 of these were sent to me. Maybe I said that at the beginning of the video, I don't remember, but all 3 of these were sent to me. So thank you very much to Lauren David for sending me Soulblight, the Dying Vale, and the Adamant Crown. I'm going to take a detour into a different style really quickly, and then we'll come back to Shadowdark for the last one, and also Soulblight. But I wanted to look at Al-Rathak, or Rathak, Tales of the Crescent Kingdom, which is a solo or multiplayer RPG, high adventure in a timeless land of sea and sand. This is by Charles F. Bryant II and Silver Nightingale. This is really, really cool because of the tables in this book. This book is full of ideas and tables. So if you guys know, Kel Arath is a really cool world game. It's kind of both. It's sword and sorcery. It's gritty. It's visceral. It feels real. The art in it is just, it grabs you. You guys should check out Al-Rathak. Excuse me, Kel Arath if you haven't. So this is not affiliated with Castle Grief. Castle Grief is the publisher of Kel Arath, but this is compatible with it, and it's designed, and I think there was like conversations going on back and forth between the creators. So anyway, it's really, really cool. The inspiration for this is a lot of different sources, but some of the inspiration that it references here, as you can see, are Ray Harryhausen, Seventh Voyage of Sinbad, The Thief of Baghdad, and The 1001 Arabian Nights. That Seventh Voyage of Sinbad movie with the genie and the Cyclops, I think it's the Cyclops, and the is it the one with the two-headed vulture, and then it has the dragon in the like that was so cool to me as a kid. I watched that along with Jason and the Argonauts. I don't know if you guys ever saw Jason and the Argonauts. Jason and the Argonauts is a huge influence on me, on my taste when it comes to fantasy and when it comes to myth and sword and sandal and all of that, which is a genre that I do not give enough attention to. I should. But Seventh Voyage of Sinbad, when I saw that, I was like, ooh, okay, I'm in. Ray Harryhausen is amazing with the Dynamation. Dynamation, I think you say? Yeah, Dynamation. Really, really cool. So the art is also by Silver Nightingale, and the art is really striking. It's often sketchy, but there are these streaks of blue. That's sort of the motif throughout, is the blue that stands out in the art, and it looks really, really good. So you get a big table of contents here. It's not hyperlinked, but that's okay. You can see what you're going to get in this book. So skills and spell packed, which is stuff you get from the main game. There's a lot of, so again, a lot of it does have to do with rules specific to Kel Arath. So if you don't use that particular system, then some of the rules are going to be more adaptable than used straight up. But it's very simple. The game is very simple, and so they're not complicated. It's not like trying to adapt a very, very complex system to your game of choice. And the thing that I really like about this is basically all the tables and all of the ideas from the very beginning. So this is what I said about the art. You can see it's really, really good. The cover is also in that same style. You get art not necessarily on every page, but you get it frequently, and it draws you right in. The writing here is also very, very good. This is the stuff that's specific to Kel Arath. You're probably not going to necessarily need to adapt these specifically to your game of choice. Right, like the costs of things, the hit points, the abilities. That's stuff that you're not necessarily going to need, but you can adapt it to your game of choice, and most games have some sort of stat blocks for the things and rules for hirelings of this quality and things like that. So that's not a huge problem. You get tables for character traits and roles, which I really like right away. Names, masculine and feminine names first, and well, I mean, we don't really get last names. I suppose they're last names in a way, but the place names or family names, whatever you want to call them, and you can create some pretty cool ones. A very particular sound, obviously, very, very influenced, I would say, not necessarily by actual Arabic names. Some of them are, but it's influenced by sort of like 1001 Arabian Nights. That's what I would say, and you can see that throughout. There's that the influences are not exactly just straight up Arabia. the influences are like that particular fairy tale lens through which you're going to view, that sort of thing. What fate brought you here? You get, different rules for, or different, a table for what brings you to Al-Rathak in the first place. And there's some really cool ideas in here, not just for Al-Rathak, but to adapt to any game of your choice. And they play along with, I would say tropes that we're familiar with, but they present them in really cool ways. What brought you to this place? Well, the legendary oasis, or to rescue the princess of the Crescent Kingdom, or to discover the source of the River of Silver Tears. Right? There's a lot of really cool quest ideas here and throughout the book. To explore Jabal al-Jumjuma. Players may not undertake or choose this adventure until 1. The source of the River of Silver Tears has been discovered. See Adventure 12. And 2. They've received a title from the Sultan as a result of an audience with the Sultan. Now, this game, as it said at the intro, is possibly able to be used as a solo game. And so keep that in mind as you read through it. I'm not a big solo game player, so I'm probably not going to use this as a solo game. What I would use this for is for ideas. Now, when you get dungeons in this book, they're not laid out like traditional dungeons. They're more like, for example, this. You'll get a description of a place with some rooms inside and maybe some tables there, and you might get a boss monster. But that's it. You don't get a full dungeon. That's a great, great piece of art. That's the Den of the Basilisk. It's a really cool take on a basilisk. I like that a lot. Here are some spark tables, which is great. In any solo game, I think you really do want spark tables. actions, descriptors, nouns, quantity, quality, and size. That's really great. You get the daily procedure for running through this particular setting. You get overland charts, sea charts, how to do combats, different kinds of ships, weather tables, all the stuff you might need, as well as points of interest. And this is another one, a great one, a big 80, what would you say, 2d6, yeah, so d66 table for, or I guess it's d66, probably do a d8. Oh, I see. There's special rules for how you get beyond those. Gotcha. I was confused for a second there. But again, this is the sort of thing that you could use in any kind of game, any world-building game or anything like that. A lot of really cool stuff. Really great piece of art here. Very striking. Very, very weird, but striking. Encounter tables, lots of great ideas. The Witch's Isle, an eerie fog-covered island where a coven of D6+1 river witches live. They are rumored to control the tides and the weather. Or the Great Sandfish Migration, a seasonal event. This event only occurs, so there's a missing T there, but this event only occurs in the summer, where large silvery fish resembling sand-colored serpents migrate up the river. These fish are said to bring good fortune, and many travelers make pilgrimages to witness the spectacle, hoping to receive blessings. If you catch a sandfish barehanded, you gain 1 fate point. To catch a sandfish, make a successful AGI, agility +9+ check. That's a really cool, local fable, local event. You can put that into almost any game. Things like that throughout the book are really, really great. A bunch of cities and descriptions of cities, getting lost and rules for that. You get the point. This is a really cool game with a lot of different ideas. Slum points of interest. So if you're going through a city in a sword and sorcery game, you need slums and you need points of interest in those slums. That's really cool. Not just slums, you get opulent districts. You get multiple districts throughout the city. Jumping ahead a little bit, you can see that you get more tables. And that's, again, what this book is great for. It's 104 pages. Mostly tables, and then some good inspiring art throughout as well. There's a lot of rules that are specific to the game itself, so again, if you're not interested in playing this particular game, then some of this book is not going to be as useful to you. Keep that in mind. Factions, this is always great, and there's some great faction ideas, like the Sultan's Court, the Starbound Mystics, the Thieves of the Shadow Bazaar, the Order of the Crescent Blade, the Tideborn Syndicate, the Silver Merchant Guild. Great factions, and if you're going to run any game in a setting, you need good factions. It helps keep any place alive and dynamic, right? Other factions doing things. Instead of just having static hexes where stuff is going on in the hexes, have more dynamic factions that cross hexes. Individuals can be operating in one hex, but their loyalties belong to a group in a different hex. That really helps to connect a big hex crawl or setting. Most of you guys know that already, I'm sure. Most of you guys do that. But faction play, if it is neglected, it can really harm an otherwise great campaign. And this has great rules for factions and great faction ideas. Towards the back, you get a bestiary. This is cool, but again, going to be a little less useful because most games have, because this is very specific to a particular kind of game. The stuff that you're running into in this bestiary is mostly stuff that you would kind of expect to find in a 1001 Arabian Nights inspired setting, right? So genies or jinns, efreets, giant leaping crabs, that's maybe new. The beggars, colossi, or a colossus, that's really cool. A crocodile, giant bats, giant squids, a sea ghoul, harpies, ogres. But you also get stuff like a pachyderm in here, a phoenix, giant rats, the rock, you gotta have the rock. Snake-headed sorceress, sailors, sea kings, the Triton guards. So you do get some more interesting kind of individual to this particular setting kinds of creatures too, which is nice. At the back, you get more dungeons. So up to this point, there were 3 earlier on that were kind of adventures. These are more dungeons in the back, and I really like how they're described here. So let's just go through 1 or 2 of them. When you roll your dungeons in Kel Arath, there are rolling for dungeons in that book, which again, it's been a while since I've gone through that book, and I've gone through the sequels to it. I think there are solo rules, or it is just a solo game primarily, but you're going to roll particular dungeons for yourself as you go through, and then these can be added in, basically. So you use that for the main thing, and then this is special features and boss rooms that you add into those dungeons. So, for example, the Lair of the Cyclops. You get a boss monster here, you get it special, and you get a description of that, along with how to generate treasure for that room. This really does, especially these dungeons, does really go hand in hand with the Kel Arath book. So if you don't have that, or you're not interested in getting those books, then this is going to be a little less useful. But if you do have those books, or if you're interested in getting them, then this is a great supplement. Really, really good supplement. But I think even more so than, say, Dying Vale or Adamant Crown, this one does sort of depend upon you having another thing to function perfectly well. Whereas I don't think those do, except for the Shadowdark base rules. You get some additional rules at the end for creating your own characters, using for kind of keeping your own legend going, the 7 Voyages idea. And then you get a cool character sheet here with a daily procedure with reference charts at the end. With, again, some spark tables here for quick use. Weather effects, quantity, quality, size, combat, defense, and combat actions. Really, really cool. Really, really cool. Al-Rathak, Tales of the Crescent Kingdom. Highly approve of this. This sort of thing is always up my alley, where you get a setting, but it's not like super, super detailed in any one area. The overall tone is great, and the individual tables are really, really cool. The ideas throughout this book, if you're interested in running sort of a 1001 Arabian Nights inspired setting, then I would say this book is really, really useful. Really, really helpful in that genre. It'll get you some really cool ideas, some really cool encounters, especially I would say the tables for overland travel and points of interest, but also the cities, the different districts and the encounters that you can have in those districts, and the faction rules as well. Lots of great ideas. I would probably plunder from Al-Rathak heavily if I were to go to a 1001 Arabian Nights setting or that sort of thing. So anyway, thank you very much to Silver Nightingale, Charles F. Bryant, for sending this to me. I appreciate that. And very good. Very, very cool. Okay, the last one that I wanted to cover is Soulblight, the Adamant Crown. This one is the longest of the 3. This one is 140 pages. Oops, there we go. So let me jump back to this. Yeah, Adamant Crown. So it's a hex crawl expansion for the world of Soulblight. Now, what you find in this one is, in essentials, it's a lot like the Dying Vale. The map's very similar. The hex crawl that you get is pretty similar, but it's very different in its tone. This is more Arthurian high chivalric romance, much more than Dying Vale. Dying Vale is blight and destruction and things falling apart. This one, the Adamant Crown, the idea here is that the king is dead, and as his dying breath, he has given basically a chance for anybody who can get the Adamant Crown, as far as I can tell. Anybody who brings it can become a king, will become the king, will rule. And so everybody is kind of going out, all the knights, everybody who wants to go and quest to go get this wants to become king. And so it's also like a how to put it? It's also not quite a timer. It doesn't have quite a timer the same way that Dying Vale does, but there is pressure because other people are going out and doing the same quest, other knights, and that's one of the big things this book does is it has like tables for rivals and it has rules for generating rivals. That's really cool. So not enemies exactly, right? Because you don't necessarily want to kill these other rival knights or these other rival adventurers, but they're definitely opponents. They're people to be fought. This one has much more specific use of art. In that, again, the art is chosen to try to evoke this high chivalric romance feeling. I think this one does a better job than Dying Vale of keeping the art within that tone and theme. There are outliers, there are pieces of art that kind of jump out at me as a little odd, but for the most part, I think it overall does a much better job. Again, it's mostly public domain, but it does a much better job of drawing me into this particular mode and setting. And I have to say that of the two, I prefer this tone. One of the things that I immediately thought of when I saw this was, ooh, I should use this in Dolmenwood. Not in necessarily Dolmenwood itself, although you could transplant it to a nearby kingdom pretty easily, but I was thinking as one of the fairy realms. Because of the emphasis on courtly chivalric romance, you could easily have one of the fairy realms in Dolmenwood be influenced by this and just make it the realm of the Adamant Crown, Marland as it's called here. And you could make it a little bit more ridiculous, make it a little bit more fey, add in some other whimsical, weird, magical elements, but you could take a lot of the broad strokes here and transplant it to one of those fairy realms. So if your players travel back and forth, there's a number that I'm going to be using. I'm going to probably be using elements from, in my Dolmenwood game, I'm going to be using elements from Rackham Vale. I'm going to be using elements from the Wildendrum, the Valley of Flowers, or the Vale of Flowers. Definitely going to be using that as one of the fairy realms. And then I'm going to probably be using elements from Adamant Crown as well. So once again, you get a very similar look at the map itself, it's in that similar style. I like this a little bit better. The hexes are a little less clear than in Dying Vale. That's one thing I would say as I look through this, that the emphasis has been put on the appearance, certainly. This is hyperlinked, which is great. And you can get an overview of the whole thing. I'll pause here for a minute. But the emphasis has been put on appearance, and sometimes that can actually get in the way of readability. Not often, but sometimes the font choice is just like, I have to do a double take, or I'll have to read the paragraph where the font is normal to see what the heading said. It happened to me a couple times when I was reading through it. It's worth keeping in mind that, you see this with a lot of those punk books and the art punk. And again, this is like, it's definitely eclectic in the way it's been put together. But this book in particular has had a lot of attention put into making it a more unified whole than I would say the original Soulblight books or the Dying Vale. And I approve of that, or I should say I appreciate that, because I do like this tone. But along with that overall style, there is a choice that has to be made, right, between sort of a visually interesting, evocative whole, and between utility. And while this book is different, it's not. Some books I've seen are very stark. Like, this is a utility-first book, and I've seen other books that this is basically an art piece, and it relates to TTRPGs completely secondarily. This book, Adamant Crown, is not in that. It's not on either of those extremes by any means. But if I had to say which way does it lie, it leans towards presentation rather than quick use. And again, some people are going to say that's what I prefer. Some people are going to say I prefer to have a quick use. I'm not sure where I fall on that. Sometimes I on one side, sometimes I'm on the other. But I would say this book does lean towards evoking a feeling, giving you fiction, giving you our pieces of art, using font choices that are, again, like flavorful and drawing, rather than just making everything clear, concise, boom, 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 getting you right to the point to run it. Because, again, the tone that is trying to be evoked here is maybe as important as the content, at least in terms of running it. So you do get quite a bit of fiction as you go through. Great pieces of art. And you can see that a lot of times the art has been interwoven with the text itself. Like I said, I think if you compare this to Dying Vale, a lot more attention has been paid to layout, to overall effect. Not only is this longer, this is 140 pages, the first was 80, but just the overall effect of this book is much more unified than Dying Vale. It's much bigger, much more complete. The ideas are just as cool as in Dying Vale. That's why I don't want to pass over Dying Vale as insufficient or just not quite up to the task or something like that. It's good, but this one has a different presentation and it's more cohesive. I think for those reasons I would give this one the edge. In terms of which, if you had to pick one, I would pick this. Not just because I prefer this kind of tone, which I already talked about. You get a lot of, I should go back actually a few pages. You get the new ancestries that you can use here, and there's some very powerful ones like Changeling, Dark Elf. You get Dragon Cursed again, and then you get the standard ones as well, like Dwarf, Elf, Human, Halfling, Half-Orc, Goblin. This was one that at first time it's that Tutelari. I was like, wait, what is that first letter? And I had to look down. Some people probably go, yeah, obviously it's a T. It didn't, when I first looked at it, I didn't know exactly what it was. An S? I don't actually know what that is, but it's T. Tutelari, it's really cool. They're sort of like giants, also kind of celestials, but they have a really cool ability there, which is hostile spells targeting you have their DC raised by +1. That's really strong. Cool, very, very flavorful, but strong. You get some cool cultures, again, you get some cool religions, you get the faces, the NPCs, the major NPCs of the setting, and again, tons and tons of stuff to steal for your game of choice. One of the reasons why I think it would be easy to put it into a Dolmenwood game is that you have things like these Dragon Cursed or these Changelings. It'd be easy to make them fairies of some kind. I think that'd be fun. Criminal factions, political factions, religious factions, independent factions. My favorite independent faction of this whole thing is the Rat Kingdom. They're just actual rats. Giant rats, but they're rats. I love that. From a first draft of obsidian dew trickling down a primordial root, a group of base vermin were transformed into a society of intelligent rats witness to primordial truth. Now they live in secret among fellows of their unenlightened kin, propagating and educating them in order to build a society independent from scavenging. That's so good. Little intelligent rats. So good. Oh my goodness. I love it. A cool calendar with attention to holy days. If you're doing a high romance or you're doing a thing with, sort of a medieval, high medieval tone, you're going to have to, if it's going to be Western Europe and then high medieval, you're going to have to pay attention to holy days in the calendar, and this book does. Really, really cool. There are also pagan holy days in here too. Maybe the common folk follow the one, maybe they kind of do both, however you want to look at it. This book also has a section on folk tales, which is so cool. If you're going to have a bard in your party, they better have folk tales to be able to reference. What I would do, I would give these pages to the bard in my party. And that way they can read through it on their own and just reference it as they see fit throughout. Oh, this is exactly like the situation that poor Lug the Mischief found himself in. Yet again, I think that's great. More character options. New classes and things like that, a Knight of St. Sophia, new rules for magic and pyromancy, new spell lists, forgotten hexes, which is, dark hexes, and then new rules for gameplay and the overall quest to claim the Adamant crown, which is really, really cool. Rules for getting blessed by the bishop, for sovereignty, different domains. You get rivalries and sample rival profiles, how to put those together, how the Soulblight works here. In this particular setting, Soulblight is the thing that connects the whole world together, and so there's particular rules for here. Tourneys, rules for melee, rules for the joust. I think that's super, super cool. And then you get, of course, the actual descriptions of the hexes in this place with some great art interwoven in. Like I said before, and I think you guys can tell, it's been worked, right? It's been put together in a very, very clear way. Good random encounters, lots and lots of stuff in here. Lots and lots of stuff. At the back of this book, you get what I think are dungeons, basically, but they're the dungeons of Soulblight, which are very interesting. They're more implied with particular rooms and encounters that are sort of like, hey, you'd want one of these or two of these or a few of these in your dungeon, but they're not like laid out. But I love that they're laid out as once upon a time. It's so cool. That's so cool. So the Tower of Thorns is once upon a time there was a girl who by birth and standing was all but invisible. Already, that is a great beginning to a fairy tale. I love this. This is right up my alley. Near the very back of the book, you get the Bestiarium, which is really, really cool. Great work, a great piece of art here, taken illuminated manuscript with this Hydra. I believe that's a Hydra, all tangled up there. And then, of course, you get the actual bestiary itself, and there's a ton of entries in here. Just like the other book, tons of entries of creatures. They're useful for Shadowdark, but you can take them for any game, and they're mostly very, very interesting. Things like the primeval ape, things like the mountain mole, things like the primeval tortoise, the ice sorcerer, Corvian ice sorceress, or ice sorcerer, excuse me. The Corvian scythe man, because you get the black feathered beast folk, or the Corvians in this setting. Towards the back of the book, you get mythic figures, like Charis of Mirkos, or Charis of Mirkos, the black lion sage, Golrat the giant, Magwir, the fiery scourge, Ra'am, the dragon eater. Really cool, legendary, mythic figures that you can have in your setting. At the back of the book, you get treasures, both sort of more regular treasures, but also treasures of legend. And you get a bit of fiction here, and again, this is one of the things you see before each section is some writing here. Sometimes I really enjoy fiction, sometimes I'm not so into it. The writing here is good, and it, again, brings you right into the setting quite well, gives you what you need for each of the sections of the book. And I think that's fun. The last thing you get in this is a level 0 gauntlet, which is very light-hearted. It's about stealing ale, and I think that's really, really cool. Level 0 gauntlet is always fun. So the Adamant Crown Soulblight is really excellent. All three of these are good, but this is excellent. This is right up my alley. People should get this. Even if you don't get the Soulblight set as a whole, or you don't get Dying Vale, I would really recommend the Adamant Crown. There's a ton of cool creatures in here. The ideas are awesome. The setting is great. The actual hex crawl is cool. but just the tone of it is excellent, spot on. The treasures, the mythic figures, the fairy tales that you get halfway through, the legends, the holy days, the feast days, all of that. It's stuff that I want to steal. So I highly recommend that you guys check this one out. Again, I'll put links below to where you can get all of these. And thank you once again to the creators, Lauren David Wiggin, for sending me Dying Vale and Adamant Crown. And thank you to Charles Bryant and Silver Nightingale for sending me Al-Rathak. All right, well, that'll do it. Hope this has been interesting, everybody, and I'll see you all in another video.